Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So today I was on Facebook and I saw this very disturbing story from the Washington Post. And I wanted to share this story with you and then provide my commentary about this story. And also, I'm interested in hearing from you. If you have comments about this particular story, feel free to leave your comments in the chat. I would love to hear what you all think about this situation. So let's check out this article. Again, this is from the Washington Post, and it's titled, "We're Just Gonna Go Out and Start Slaughtering Them. 3 cops fired after racist talk of killing Black residents." And this is in Wilmington, North Carolina. So you had this white officer by the name of Michael Piner, who predicted that Black Lives Matter protests would lead to civil war. And he said, "I'm ready." He told another officer that he planned to buy an assault rifle. And he said, "We're just going to go out and start slaughtering fucking niggers." This is what this officer said. This is somebody that has a badge, somebody that has a uniform, somebody that has a gun, somebody that's supposed to protect and serve all residents in Wilmington, North Carolina, espousing this kind of hatred. And it gets worse. I mean, there's more things here. It says that the shocking threat came amid extended, openly racist conversations between 3 officers. And the names are listed here: 50-year-old Jesse Moore and James Gilmore. It says, in discussions taped by accident on a patrol car camera and released Wednesday by the department, the men freely dropped racial slurs, suggesting killing Black residents and deriding protesters. He said, "We'll wipe them off, the effing map. That'll put them back about 4 or 5 generations." This is this officer, Piner, talking about African Americans, a white officer saying this. And then all 3 officers were fired when the new police chief discovered this information. And this police chief is Black. He called the conversations brutally offensive. And he talked about how it's one of the most exceptional and difficult cases he's encountered in his career. And the tapes came to light by chance. This article talks about how a sergeant was conducting a routine video review, and she found nearly a 2-hour-long clip from the cruiser created by accidental activation. After listening to the racist discussion, she alerted a superior who started an internal investigation. This is just one conversation between white police officers that just happened to get captured on audio and video and stuff like that. And I just wonder how many of these types of conversations regularly occur in these police cars. It talks about how this officer, Piner, had been with the force since 1998. That's a very long time. That's like 20 years. That's about a little over 20 years that this person has been with the force. And who knows? I would be interested in knowing if any complaints have been filed against any of these officers before for their conduct. And it may be revealed later in this particular article. But for somebody to harbor this kind of racist, hateful type of mentality, I wonder like if there have been any complaints against them for racial profiling or police brutality or any of that stuff. You know, it said the recording began by expressing, fury against the ongoing protests against police brutality and racial injustice in the wake of George Floyd's death. And, it goes on and on. Let's see. And then this other officer by the name of Gilmore, who was hired like a year before the other officer, complained about whites worshiping blacks, adding that he's seen a video of a fine-looking white girl and this little punk pretty boy bowing down and kissing their toes. And I've seen similar videos about that, like images of that. Like I've seen an image of these white people washing black people's feet and all that kind of stuff, as a part of the protests against the police brutality and as an expression of their guilt for what is going on in the society, for white racism and all that kind of stuff. And, when I saw those images, I just thought, man, this is like white guilt on crack. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. But let's continue on. These two officers complained about black officers on the force, calling one a piece of shit and complaining that another one was sitting on his ass during the protest. I mean, this is how they view their fellow officers. These black officers that work side by side with them. And then there's one case right here. It talks about how there was an arrest of a black woman, and one of these officers were repeatedly calling this black woman a racial slur. This officer said she needed a bullet in the head right then and move on. Let's move the body out of the way and keep going. This is what he said. And then he complained about a black judge, and they called him a fucking Negro magistrate. That's the kind of language that they use for this judge. So I'm going to read a little bit further and then get into this commentary real quick. And then these people, after getting caught, they argued that they were not racist, adding that they don't normally speak like that. Two of these other officers, saying that they were just feeding off of what this other officer was saying. And they were basically throwing the other officer under the bus and trying to say, well, hey, this is not how we usually talk. And that's the kind of stuff you hear all the time from these racists when they get caught using the N-word or, disrespecting black people. They want to pretend like it's some kind of anomaly, like that's not how they ordinarily act. Yeah, so that's a summary of the situation. I will post a link to this article in the description box so that you could check it out. Yeah, I just realized I didn't share my screen, but you can check out the article. The link is in the description box so that you can read it for yourself and judge it for yourself. But I just want to provide some brief commentary about this situation, and shout out to everyone that's tuning in. Hopefully I will be able to get to your comments before I close out. But it just made me think about a couple of things. Number one, these officers are working under a black police chief, and I understand that this black police chief is new to his position. I'm glad that this police chief fired those officers. That was obviously appropriate. That was the right thing to do. So I commend him for that. But when I just look at this situation, it's just another reminder that black faces in high places are not enough to transform these racist institutions that oppress our people. just putting a head Negro in charge of something doesn't necessarily change the structure of the system. The system needs to be completely transformed. That's what needs to happen. And just appointing some Negro leader at the top of something is not going to change things, because obviously in this situation you had a black police chief, but you still had this kind of racism within the police force. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. These are just a couple of officers that got caught saying that what a lot of these officers already think, and a lot of things that these officers already say. So this is just like the tip of the iceberg, really. And I want to get into some other things that about this whole situation. I mean, there has to be some kind of way to screen out these kind of people from serving on the police force. People that harbor these kind of racist attitudes about black people should not be serving as police officers. The police have the power to deprive people of their freedom. The police have the power to brutalize people. Police have the power to kill people. They literally have a license to kill in many circumstances. And the last thing that we need is for that kind of power to be in the hands of a racist, white supremacist race soldier. And, there have been reports about the police departments being infiltrated by white supremacists and, neo-Nazis and things of that nature. There has to be a better way to vet these candidates that are serving as police. And, that's something that needs to be looked into to make sure that we don't have these kind of people joining the police force. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is this, they characterize this whole struggle against police brutality as just some black struggle. They said, we're going to, go out and kill all these black people and stuff like that. And they're predicting that there's going to be some kind of civil war or race war or something like that. And the fact of the matter is, at this present moment, this movement to end police brutality is multiracial, is multi-generational. So this is not just some issue that's solely, black people versus white people type of issue at this point. And, so this is not some situation where they can just attack the black community solely, because many of those people on the front lines protesting and demonstrating, a lot of them are white people and other people of different ethnicities. So that's one thing. And then another thing that I want to address is this is not going to lead to some civil war or anything like that. I mean, that's just an exaggeration. That's a part of the rhetoric of these extremist organizations, these white supremacists. These protests are not going to lead to anything like that. I mean, there's going to be a movement for social change, just like there was a movement in the 60s in other periods of time, like you had the Black Renaissance, the Harlem Renaissance, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement. And now you have this Black Lives Matter movement, which is actually bigger than the actual organization. So it's highly unlikely that there would be a race war. This is just a demonstration of people expressing their outrage and demanding that there be certain reforms in society. And when I heard this rhetoric about a race war, I immediately just thought about, if there was a race war, are we even prepared for that as a people? I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. Like, are we really prepared for anything like that? We're solely dependent on others to provide us with food, clothing, and shelter, and the bare necessities. Many people haven't trained in survival tactics or how to use weapons, firearms or other types of weapons. If there's a race war, we are not anywhere near prepared for such a confrontation. And that's just something that we really need to reflect upon, and not even just in terms of some uh, highly unlikely race war or anything like that. But just in terms of self-defense, in terms of defending ourselves, our families, and our community, we need to think about those type of things. Think about preparing ourselves to defend ourselves and our community. And there's nothing, radical about self-defense. That's just common sense. Every single nation that has power in this world has an army to defend themselves and to protect their interests. And the Black community should be no different from any other community. And the biggest thing about this whole thing is I'm just wondering, like, how often do these type of conversations take place? How many of these police officers actually harbor this kind of hatred towards Black people? So yeah, I just had to share this with you all, so that just make sure that you all know about this particular issue. It's something that was on my mind. So I'm going to read through your comments. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Lightbearer. Shout out to Bonafide 1970. So I'm going to share a couple of these comments on the screen. So you had T-Boy saying it's nauseating that these statements are coming from peace officers who are supposed to protect and serve the community. Racism at its finest. Absolutely. Exactly. That's exactly what the situation is. These are the people we rely on to defend and to protect and to serve and all that kind of stuff to make communities safe. And these are the kind of people that are talking about making situations unsafe, talking about shooting and slaughtering Black people. So let's see what comments people have to say. Oh, Bonafide said, I wonder if Candace Owens will raise a GoFundMe dollars, GoFundMe dollars for these 3 little pigs as well. I wouldn't be surprised if she did, man. I think I wouldn't even be surprised if she came up with all kinds of ways to defend this kind of blatant racism. I can't imagine somebody trying to defend this. I mean, these cops were literally using the N-word, talking about slaughtering Black people. Even a coon, a buffoon like Candace Owens wouldn't be dumb enough, I would think, to defend those kind of people. I'm just looking through your comments right now. Yeah, so I want to thank you all for tuning in, and man. It's a whole bunch of real stuff going on in this world, man. You got every other day you're hearing about another person killed by these police. You have this COVID-19 pandemic that's plaguing the world right now. And in our communities, despite this pandemic, despite stay-at-home orders, not only do you have the police killing Black people, you have the inner city violence still plaguing our communities, not being abated or slowed down because of this crisis. There's a lot going on. And, we just need to be focused, man. It's unfortunate that we have a lot of people that are preoccupied with nonsense at a time like this, preoccupied with gossip and foolishness when real things are going on in this world. So with that, peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a good night.